Hey folks, Sakataka Saber here, and today I'm looking to talk through my personal opinion of the top 10 LPL players of all time. So, if you didn't know, the LPL is in order to recognize their 10th anniversary, they're selecting their top 10 greatest LPL players of all time. I thought that'd be a good opportunity to sort of look through things and then give my own take on it. Who am I? You don't need to care about that. But the point is, I think I just want to put out my 2 cents out there. I think there's definitely a lot of great candidates, and I want to sort of bring a lot of them to the forefront with my own personal rankings. So, yeah, we're going to step right through. First things first, though, I'd like to talk through the criteria of the list, just some of the things that I'm looking forward to. I'll put a little timestamp right there. You could skip if you don't want to hear any of this stuff. But generally, what I'm looking for is I want to see accolades. I'm focused primarily on the LPL Championship, so nothing before the LPL started in 2013. And we're focused on LPL Championships, Worlds appearances, Worlds titles or MSI titles. I'll count those as well. Those are all big signs of a player's success, their impact to the league. So definitely, that's probably the top of my list. After that, individual awards. There's a Chinese yearly award given out at the end of every year. It's not perfect because it is given out after Worlds, so there is some Worlds bias that sort of seeps its way in there, but they've been doing it every year since 2014, so it's a good snapshot of who's who in the league. You nominate a certain amount of players, and then the actual player selected is the top player of the role. I think it's a decent benchmark for who's really big in a given year. Next up, I want to focus on longevity, right? So this is an all-time ranking. There are some players with some great short peaks, something like Deft on EDG. Really phenomenal player, just didn't really stick around in the LPL to truly cement his dominance the way maybe some of the players on this list did. So I want to prioritize longevity. I think it's really important for an all-time rating like this. And then after that, just my personal opinion, how important you are to the LPL. There's some players that are more synonymous with the LPL. I do tend to favor them, and I want to, shout out some names maybe you haven't heard of or that are less talked about, but are very crucial to the LPL story as well. So that's just my personal bias. I did take a look at some stats as well. Oracle's Elixir has a great resource. Definitely check them out if you can. But they've had stats since summer 2016, so that's where we sort of start the analysis. Unfortunately, data before then is a little bit messier, a little tougher to collect, a little less full. But regardless, we're going to have a number of games played and then the win rates as well. Just as a heads up, first number is the regular season's game played. The parentheses is the playoffs. So when you're reading the low pages afterwards, you'll be able to see that and understand that. And then finally, just a quick aside, I do want to give a little bit more leniency to the earlier players. They generally have shorter careers. Their seasons are short as well, so they don't accumulate as many stats, and there's just less memory of them, right? So I do want to, at least examine that. I do want to value players that have come around earlier as well. And without further ado, I think that's enough setup. Let's step into my personal top 10. Number 10. To lead off this list, I'm beginning with perhaps my most controversial selection, and a name seemingly forgotten as time has gone by. I'm starting with Zatai, who I think is China's most underrated player. Only 15 years old when he initially starred on IG in their Season 2 World Squad, Zatai, as well as his teammate Kid, were the original Chinese young prodigies. What that meant is that when most of the other original Chinese power players retired early in the LPL era, Zatai's youth gave him staying power that early legends like PDD, Wei Xiao, and Messiah just didn't have. IG was a fairly strong team in the early seasons of LPL, and Zatai established himself as one of China's early strong mids, alongside the likes of Cool, Whites, and Messiah. However, he also went on to showcase his flexibility when IG brought in an upstart young Korean star in Rookie to play his position, and Zatai moved up top, a traditionally weak role for the LPL in general, and a shift that revived his career and helped Rookie to his first Worlds appearance in 2015. Finally, to cap his career, he found himself on an excellent RNG squad in 2018. Splitting time with fellow top laner Letme, Zatai was able to close out his career with 2 LPL championships, albeit in a limited role, only playing sparingly. Retiring for good after being called into action to finish out the 2019 regular season and playoffs, he had played in all 13 LPL splits in history at the time of his retirement, with only Clearlev and Uzi, who, spoiler alert, are on the list, carrying the 2013 LPL debut season torch afterwards. The wildest thing of all was that at the point of his final LPL game, he was a mere 21 years old and likely could have gone further had he chose to, firmly outplaying RNG's other top lane option, Amazing J. Ultimately, while I don't think his talent reached the levels of the others on the list, only having one Best of Award nomination in his entire LPL career, I do think he deserves a much bigger nod given his flexibility, his early start, and his contributions to winning that makes a case that he's top 10. Number 9. While Flandre admittedly looked shaky in his EDG tenure, those in the know knew it was a capstone for a lengthy and successful career. The bottom line is that Flandre has been a strong top laner for years on end, dating all the way back to spring 2015, where he broke through with Snake Esports, and he's played in 16 splits since, a crazy amount given top has always been a bit of a weak spot in the LPL. While it feels like the league has been ruled by the same couple of mid laners for years on end, top lane has been a much larger revolving door. Flandre is the exception to that rule. The leader and shot caller of Snake since its inception, and a 5-time nominee of the Best Top Laner award, winning it in his 2015 debut split. While Snake never quite broke through to even an LPL final, they were a team so frequently on the cusp that maintained itself even after they turned into LNG. After 6 combined years as the face of the Snake/LNG franchise, Flandre found himself on EDG in 2021, and while he wasn't at his peak or the star of that established EDG squad, his arrival was just in time to help bring them stability to the team's historically weakest role. Thanks to that stint, it gave some bulk to his trophy case, as he managed to win both an LPL title and a Worlds title in this late career run that cemented him as a top 10 LPL player. Number 8. One of China's most accomplished supports, Ming rose from the Young Miracles talent factory straight onto one of China's premier teams, that RNG squad I mentioned before. Replacing the all-time legendary support Mata was big shoes to fill, but Ming has done so admirably for what has now been 13 splits and counting, growing into a legend in his own right. It's a huge role being the support of the greatest ADC in League of Legends history, but Ming has filled that role to perfection, immediately excelling in as Yuzi's support and being there for RNG's 2018 LPL Split Championships and MSI 2018. And then after Uzi left, it was his success with Gala that was critical in bringing RNG back into the fold in 2021, where RNG established themselves as the king of spring, winning both the LPL Spring Splits and MSI in 21 and 22. Constantly considered a top 2 LPL support since his introduction to the league, Ming's importance to the RNG dynasty gives him plenty of reason to be in the top 10. Number 7. The first of 3 Korean mid laners that have dominated the LPL story for years on end, while most big-name Koreans were paid handsomely to join directly into LPL rosters, Doinbi was starting his career with an upstart LSPL team, Chaogu, in spring of 2015. After dominating at the lower level and promoting into an LPL spot, he immediately took the squad to be one of China's finest, finishing runner-up in his debut LPL split. While it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows, Doinbi has been decisively the LPL's most unique player, bringing his roam-first playstyle and zany champion pool to the forefront. while butting heads with his jungler Swift eventually broke the original Xiaogu squad to the point where they had to forfeit the Spring 2016 playoffs. Doinbe's excellence was proven yet again when he took another LSPL team through promotion and immediately brought the new QG Reaper squad, separate from the original team he had left. Don't ask, it's a whole thing. They eventually became JDG, above the original roster. It wasn't until Doinbe joined FPX where he really found that second window, as they immediately staked their claim as China's premier squad, going on to dominate the 2019 Summer Split and take home both the LPL Split title and, more importantly, Worlds. While FPX wasn't able to replicate either title moving forward, they remained a strong, though admittedly controversial team in the following years. If I'm being honest, Doinbe's hurt the most by his team's inability to hold things together, whether it was the original QG crashing and burning, the Rogue Warriors super team falling shy of Worlds and then basically liquidating in 2018, or FPX's meltdown in the following Worlds after their championship, or LNG just never quite getting it together in the 2022 season. Doinbe's trophy case feels like it should be a bit fuller. Still, it's impossible to tell the story of the LPL without the famous now streamer who's been nominated 5 times for China's Best Mid, winning the honor once in his World Championship season. Between his standout accomplishments on the Rift and his gregarious personality off of it, Doinbe has woven himself into the LPL story and is worthy of a top 10 slot on this list. Number 6. Far less bombastic than the ever-vocal Doinbe, Scout was a later arrival to the scene in the LPL in summer 2016. After originally sharing time with Faker on SKT1 in his debut season in Korea, he wasn't able to supplant the league's GOAT and headed out to Edward Gaming to seek his career. Immediately stepping into the starting lineup, he proved his worth right out of the gate, helping contribute to the first perfect regular season in LPL history, splitting time with Pawn. Since then, Scout has had an ironclad grip on the starting mid lane slot for EDG for an absolutely massive 6+ years. Since his debut in summer 2016, he's had the second best regular season win rate among mid laners with over 100 games played, winning a strong 64.9% of the time. He's largely been considered one of China's finest mid laners, being nominated 5 times for mid laners of the year and winning once in his World Championship year. Furthermore, unlike the more mercurial Doinbe, Scout has largely stuck on as a near-lifer with EDG, with only this season switching to LNG. And it's paid dividends. He has 3 LPL championships to go with his world title in 2021, the crown jewel of his career. Based on this, he lands very favorably on my ranking and could probably go higher based on raw accolades. That being said, the players above all feel more synonymous with the LPL, but you can't go wrong with a player this successful in any LPL top 10. Number 5. Perhaps the only long-term success to come out of the original 2015 Korean exodus, Rookie was already a rising talent coming out of the KT Arrows when he arrived in IG. While bigger names like Dade, Pawn, Dandy, Mata, Insect, and Kakao headlined the big-ticket Korean side, most of them had already left within 2 years as China endured major growing pains trying to incorporate dual-language rosters. Rookie, however, was the talent who took to China like a duck to water, learning the language while sharpening his skills, and in a cathartic touch, he rewarded the LPL with their breakthrough first World Championship in 2018. Since he arrived in 2015, he's been the bulwark of IG, often carrying the squad single-handedly before they eventually complemented him with the likes of Jackie Love and The Shy, which in my opinion puts him a slight cut above those other 2 standout talents. Furthermore, after a touch of slowdown near the end of his IG tenure, his post-IG career has seen somewhat of a resurgence, leading a previously 0-16 V5 squad into Worlds contention, and fighting hard for a TES squad that came into 2023 with big aspirations. Where his resume falls short, however, is on the team success side. Despite individual excellence, being nominated for Best Mid 7 times and winning in that World Championship year in 2018, for a huge majority of his tenure, IG failed to surround him with peak talent. And even when they eventually did with the likes of the Shy and Jackie Love, that combo only amounted to a single LPL championship in spring 2019, right after they won Worlds. Still, Rookie is an LPL legend, and between the crazy longevity and the individual excellence, no LPL top 10 list would be complete without him. Number 4. To put it plainly, Uzi is the biggest no-brainer on this list. His incredible longevity dates back from making the Season 3 World Finals at only 16 years old, all the way through his incredible peak as the defining, flag-bearing Chinese ADC, the star of RNG for years on end. Individually, his talent is unmatched, as since summer 2016, he's the only player in LPL history to average over 10 CS a minute. He also touts a staggering 30.6 damage share throughout his career. And to be clear, this is even beyond his original Feed the Puppy days in the very early seasons. Nominated for Best Chinese ADC 6 times, basically every time he's played full seasons, he took home the Best ADC honors in 4 of those occasions, speaking to that individual dominance. Now, I do think his actual trophy case is a bit disappointing and holds him back from being higher than the players I've listed above, though. Despite his overwhelming talent, he's only accrued 2 LPL championships, both in 2018, despite a deluge of finalist appearances. And his tenure on non-royal teams has been lackluster for a legend. Stints on OMG, Xiaogu, and BLG were all major disappointments, though, to be completely fair, not always his fault. And unfortunately, later on in his career, at what was his peak form, he did have to sit out of many games due to either injury or stream breaks. Still, those are minor nits on what is a truly brilliant legacy, and you can't discount his incredible peak in icon status in the league. Number 3. Clearlove's domestic track record is truly unique and cements him as one of the greatest LPL players of all time. The only member of the original WE 1.0 power team to truly carry the torch beyond 2014, he did it for years on end and built an LPL legacy that his WE teammates failed to develop. When half of WE split to form EDG in 2013, the legacy as China's premier squad went with Clearlove right into his new squad, where he played 12 of his 14 separate splits for them, though admittedly, one of them was a single game in 2021, a loss to his former squad. He tied for the most championships with 5 LPL titles, and although EDG often disappointed at Worlds during his tenure, when you think LPL, you gotta think Clearlove. Additionally, it'd be unfair to discount his role in EDG's MSI victory in 2015, where EDG turned heads when they took an international competition over a Prime Faker's previously undefeated LeBlanc, a performance that led to Clearlove winning China's Best Jungler honors that year. While his numbers aren't best represented by Oracle Elixir data, since they only capture his late career from summer 2016 onwards, in that span, his team was still king, as he has the best win rate among players with over 100 games played, putting up a brilliant 74.2% win rate in a 124 game sample. It goes without saying, but I'll say it anyways. Clearlove is definitively a top 3 LPL player. Number 2. I spoke on the big 3 Korean mids that have defined Chinese League of Legends, and while on an individual talent level, I would give each of them the narrow edge, when it comes to LPL accolades and this list, I'm choosing to put Xiaohu a cut above. What really puts him over is the consistent team success that he's largely the catalyst for. RNG has been so defined by his aggressive style that not only enables him to carry, but his fellow stars as well. It's no secret that this was the case for Uzi, but what really defines his success to me was what he was able to do before and after the super carry left the team. His introduction to the Royal Never Give Up lineup after Starhorn Royal Club flamed out was a blessing in disguise that altered the LPL landscape, as he managed to win the 2016 Spring Split without the legendary ADC. Then, after Uzi's successful tenure where RNG consistently either won or made the LPL finals, Uzi was headed off to his first long-term retirement. After a struggle in 2020 where RNG didn't even make summer playoffs, it was a radical change to top lane that sparked life back into the RNG squad, where he immediately became China's best top laner before eventually swapping back. That dawned a new era for RNG, focused on his synergy with Wei and facilitation of Gala, giving rise to 2 more MSI championships and world births. All in all, it's been 17 splits of Xiaohu, tied for the most of all time, 6 world trips, 3 MSI championships, a career-leading 5 LPL championships tied with Clearlove, and the only player in the LPL yearly awards to win a Best in Position award in 2 separate positions, winning twice as a mid laner and once up top. It might be a controversial take, but I think Xiaohu deserves his spot as the LPL's second best player of all time, even without that elusive title. All right, before we get on to number 1, I do want to shout out a few honorable mentions I think are worth discussing beforehand. A lot of these players are really great. They just fell short of the top 10 that I set out here. I'm going to start out talking about Cool, just a great early LPL player. He was clearly the engine of 2013 China's best domestic team, OMG, and had some really great longevity, particularly for a player that started in the very first split. I think the big knock on him, though, is that he really didn't see much success after OMG declined in 2015. That year, they created a super team, they brought in Uzi, and ultimately, that didn't really work out, and ever since then, OMG's fallen off big time, and Cool fell off as well. He had short, unsuccessful stints with Newbie, LGD, and FPX to close out his career in relative obscurity. It really fizzled out, unfortunately, and I think if he had a better ending to his career, he'd have a much more compelling case as a strong original player in the league. Afterwards, I do want to talk about Name, who is a huge sleeper pick for me, someone who I honestly tried sneaking in there before I just took a look at the numbers. What really sets him apart is he's the only player in league history to win LPL championships on 3 separate teams. He won 1 with PE, a Positive Energy, to start things off. Then he had 2 of them with EDG, I believe, in their first iteration. And then finally, he got 1 in spring 2016, I believe, with RNG. So, really great track record. He was a strong ADC, especially early on. But I just didn't have longevity, only 7 splits played. And he wasn't necessarily the star of those teams, but still great player and I think worth remembering. I'll follow that up by talking about Chie, who just had an excellent longevity style case for this list. Really great stint with WE, strong counting stats. His 17 splits is tied for most in LPL history. I think the knock on him is that he just lacks in accolade success. He was on one really special team, WE in 2017. They won the Spring Split, but outside of that, he really hasn't been on a major contender. That's his only LPL championship. He made 2 Worlds appearances, one in 2017, of course, but also a cute one in 2020 with LGD. But ultimately, that was the first year I believe China got 4 teams in the championship, and it was never really a contender in any major form. So ultimately, mid is such a stacked position. It's hard to earn a role there, a spot there. We already have a whole bunch of them on the list. So tough to put Xie on because of those factors, but great player, worth remembering. Only WE player to really get a shout out in my honorable mentions or the list proper. Following that, I do want to talk about Crisp. I think he's clearly the 3rd best LPL support in history, but the 2 in front of him are very far in front, of course. has a world championship with FPX, which is awesome, and he's been really consistently good for a very long time, even to the modern day, right? So really strong player and worth mentioning as an honorable mention for sure. And then I do want to briefly touch on Knight. Honestly, his raw counting stats are very good, but I didn't really consider him that heavily for the list. I will note he does have the talent to make it work. He just needs the accolades. He's got 10 splits played already, which is a bit crazy since you think of him as a separate generation as some of these other guys who I've actually put on the list. But he's only won a single LPL split championship, and I do want to see more out of his talent on the bigger stage, particularly at Worlds, right? He's been there twice, and both times his team has relatively disappointed. Still, the individual talent is really there, and maybe on JDG, we'll get to see that play out and him establish himself as a real star next to his star-studded teammates. I do want to also shout out two names that really ought to be on the list. They were on the official list, Jackie Love and The Shy. And honestly, both are stars worthy of the list. And accolade-wise, talent-wise, I think they make a great case. I just found it hard to separate them as compared to Rookie, who had even more longevity on top of them. And then I also wanted to shout out some of these older guys or these more longevity-based guys. If you wanted to replace Zatai and Flandre for Jackie Love and The Shy, I believe that's what they did in the actual list. I have no issues with that. They're great players. They both have a world championship on IG, and they have some great individual split wins on top of the individual accolades, the yearly awards. They score very well in that as well. So both great players, and honestly, if you have them on the list, completely fair. And finally, the last player I want to shout out, MLXG. He was actually my number 11 player. I did a whole short speech for him, and it turns out I had miscounted, and he was number 11. So just fell short of the list. And the thing that really dooms him is his lack of longevity, right? He only played 8 splits in the league, but he accomplished a ton in those 8 splits. He debuted with King, but he really made Starcoin Royal click when he was on that team. In those 8 splits, he was nominated for Best Jungler every single year. He came home with 3 LPL championships. Really impressive stuff. I mean, that outpaces Uzi, frankly. So, just doesn't have the longevity to match, but I think his individual brilliance in his short time in the LPL, really stunning, and I want to honor that. Ultimately ran out of room, but great player. And that closes out my honorable mentions. Next up, you should know it by now, but we're getting into my number 1 LPL player. Number 1. The more I dug into it, the more I felt like Mako was just the right choice. At 17 splits, he's tied for the most splits played in LPL history, and he spent his entire career with EDG and just been brilliant. Brought in spring 2015 to replace Team WE 1.0 legend Vizith for support at EDG, Mako not only surpassed him, he's run circles around him. In the Chinese Yearly Award, he's won Best Support as a rookie, and he's been nominated in every single year but one, 2020, and has won 5 out of the 7 times he's gone up. He's been paired with a cavalcade of brilliant ADCs for EDG, and been dynamic with all of them. Deft, iBoy, Hope, Viper, and now he's taking a rookie to the top with Leave, and he's been able to just make magic with all of them. And ever since Oracle's Elixir started tracking stats in summer 2016, he's put up a win rate of 65.2% in 541 games, the highest among all support players with at least 100 played games in that era. And most importantly, he's got the trophy case to match: 4 LPL championships, 6 Worlds appearances, and the EDG World Championship in 2021. I'm more than comfortable to award Mako with the historical crown of the LPL's greatest player, worthy of topping the all-time. top 10. All right, if you managed to get through all of that, I'd like to genuinely thank you for watching. I'd love to hear your personal top 10s, or if you have any qualms about my ranking, and trust me, there's plenty of debate to be had, feel free to voice it in the comments. Will I ever make a video again? I don't know. But for now, this is Saketake Saber signing off. See ya!